Hour number 3 starts right here, right now, live on this Wednesday on the early line on SportsGrid. I am Ben Stevens. He is Donnie Rightside. One more hour to go up until 11 a.m. Eastern time. How hot is that stove in MLB? We'll find out up next with Craig Mish. Then we'll have a preview of this NFL playoff weekend, super wild card weekend, 6 matchups, and what is in store this postseason around the NFL before a couple of hardwood handicaps on this Wednesday night in the NBA and college basketball as conference action continues. But we start with how we ended hour number 2, a question to the people out there on Bill Belichick's future as the head coach of the New England Patriots. In fact, the exact question was, will Bill Belichick be the head coach of this Patriots organization in 2024? And 71% of the public, Donnie, saying no. Let's start there. Both you and I agree with the public. How come?
Because it's the right move here for the Patriots. It's time to move on. Years and years and years later now, as you get away from Tom Brady, it's apparent that you need that fresh break. And the reason why I'll bring up this move here between the Philadelphia Eagles and the New England Patriots, and it's different because one organization won a ton of Super Bowls under a head coach, the other didn't win any. Andy Reid is a fantastic head coach, but everybody knew it was time for Andy Reid to move on from the Philadelphia Eagles, and we knew he'd get a job right away, which he did with Kansas City, and he won multiple Super Bowls. Nobody's technically surprised, but when the run is over, the fans, the ownership, and the players just need a break here. It's time for Bill Belichick. It's the perfect time, Ben, for him to move on.
Let's welcome in that SportsGrid radio audience here, listening live on Sirius XM Channel 159. All of our other radio terrestrial affiliates now in the mix as well. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens, discussing the future of Bill Belichick, what is still left in New England, if anything, and maybe his future beyond Foxborough. Let's start with the Patriots component of this conversation. Very much agree with the analogy that you made and the comparison to Andy Reid, who at the end of his tenure in Philadelphia was involved heavily in front office decision-making. That has been the case for Bill Belichick for quite a long time now in New England. He's been the guy leading draft evaluations. He's been the guy orchestrating deals behind the scenes in free agency. Any trades that have happened for New England, Bill Belichick has really been the one to structure them. Sometimes you bite off a little bit more than you can chew. And I think that's coming to a close in Foxborough as well. I hope for Bill's sake that after 24 years in New England, that if he does have a new stop in the National Football League, it's solely on a head coach, because there is little doubt he is one of the 3 best coaches in the history of the National Football League. He is the most successful when it comes to winning the ultimate prize, that a Lombardi Trophy as a Super Bowl champion, 6 of them in New England. Yes, we can debate, was it Tom Brady or was it Bill Belichick? Danny Amendola throwing a little bit of lighter fuel on that fire, by the way, in an Apple TV documentary on the Patriots franchise and the dynasty that was in New England. Amendola, a quote widely circulated yesterday, Donnie, saying, "We worked for Bill, we played for Tom." I'm sure there's context to that we won't see until that documentary series is made available. But this year, of course, was a disaster in Foxborough. A 4-13 record, the least amount of wins in any of the nearly 3 decades Bill Belichick has had as an NFL head coach, Cleveland or New England. The worst record he has had at the helm of a Patriots team in his 24 years in the organization. The win total was 7.5. They went well under that number. An offense that continued to regress despite the hiring of Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator, and a team that wasn't even really competitive when booked as an underdog. Capped off by a 17-3 defeat, their first loss to the New York Jets in quite some time. The Jets snapping a 16-game losing skid to the New England Patriots with a victory in the regular season finale. So now to the timeline, Donnie. If we are both in agreement that Bill Belichick's time in Foxborough has come to an end, when do you believe that ultimate decision will be reached, and when will it be shared with everybody around the NFL?
Before Friday. I fully expect that because, number one, what are you waiting around for, even if it is going to be okay, we're moving on from Bill Belichick? The coaching hires are going to start rather quickly here at this point. You want to put your best foot forward and cast that wide net. Now, granted, Robert Kraft's a wonderful owner. It's a primo job that's going to open up there in New England. But also, let's be honest with ourselves. If Robert Kraft had made his mind up, let's just say by week 8, Ben, do you think he's like, well, let's wait till the end of the season before we actually think about what coaches we want? Absolutely not. Those wheels are churning. Now, when you take a look at Tennessee and what they did with Vrabel, the New England Patriots aren't going to make that mistake here. And if there is Bill Belichick under contract for another year, do you know what they're probably going to do? Let me pick up the phone and see who wants to trade for Bill Belichick so we can get compensation back here. That's what should make the most sense. And that's why, Ben, I don't think a move was made already just to say, Bill Belichick, you're fired. Yeah. You're checking every single asset you have around the league to get back to see if you can cash in on something before just letting Bill Belichick go away for nothing. He'll find his way to another NFL organization, but I do think we will have an answer, honestly, before Friday afternoon, Ben.
266 wins at the helm in New England, 302 in his NFL head coaching career, only behind, as it stands right now, Don Shula and Papa Bear George Halas in terms of NFL head coaching wins in the history of this sport and league. So it would make a lot of sense for New England, after Mike Vrabel was shockingly fired yesterday by Tennessee, to reach out to their former defensive staff member and, of course, a linebacker under Bill for many a years in Foxborough. Now for Bill Belichick's individual future. Do you think he will coach somewhere else in the National Football League in 2024? And if so, Donnie, where are the most likely landing spots for Bill Belichick?
100%. And I know that Bill Belichick has had a great working relationship with Robert Kraft, but if I take a look at an organization that probably will overpay for Bill Belichick and give him the reins to do whatever he wants, it's probably the Carolina Panthers at this point, to be honest. Because, number one, they need to make a splash down there. And number two, and I said, well, it will never work with David Tepper. You don't think he's coming in with a stack of paperwork like this, of legalities, where, David Tepper, you even answer the phone for me and say, you know what? I want you to pick a different quarterback. I'm going to get $100 million out of this just to walk away. But what other organization, a healthy organization, is going to give Bill Belichick the reins based on, you know what? You have the pedigree here. You get pick your own GM, pick your own president, and I'll stay out of your way. NFL ownership groups typically aren't working like that. But David Tepper is such a bad spot that he can get instant credibility back with a $25 million a year contract for Bill Belichick to run his franchise, and he promises to stay out of the way. I think that's a perfect fit.
6 vacancies as of this moment: Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Carolina, Washington, now Tennessee, and of course Atlanta as well. 6 vacancies as of this moment, maybe with a 7th that could open up if New England moves on from Bill Belichick. But of course, 6 new spots potentially for Belichick to become a head coach. And I would hope, again, it's just as a head coach of what happens in between the white lines, not necessarily as influential in any front office spots. The hot stove in Major League Baseball this offseason, up next.
Fun to do because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting. But New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear.
You cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, a Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
The wife said, we're getting the Stanley Cups, and now they got Stanley Cups in West Virginia.
Yep. They're doing $300 million gross a year in sales.
Listen, man, we don't need that much, man.
They're
I'll
crushing
take
it.
a little piece of the Stanley Cup. I would drink from the Stanley Cup every day. I'll have inscribed on there. We'll get our BVB inscribed.
Yeah.
Stanley Cups.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
That tells you how good this league is. Jeff, your mind. Big 12. Who's the team to beat?
Well, it's always Kansas. I don't care who comes in the league. And I love Kelvin Sampson, what he's done at Houston. I don't care. So Marquette, to me, is the best backcourt in the country. Tyler Kolek's the best point guard. Cam Jones is an elite scorer who just plays with such a good pace, and he's so smart.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those two plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars had, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. It's not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
How hot is that stove? Are the flames flying high for Major League Baseball's offseason? We discuss live right here on this Wednesday on the early line. It's Ben, it's Donnie, the man in the middle is our MLB insider and the host of Newswire starting at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Craig Mish. Craig, as always, we appreciate the time. Thank you for joining us here on this Wednesday.
Yeah, we're getting there, closer and closer to the beginning of spring training, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks we get players signed and in camp, and we can start to really analyze this thing. But yeah, we still have some significant free agents that are still waiting to get hired.
Yep. Significant free agents, but a couple of moves this week in the National League. The Giants, a big deal. They acquire Robbie Ray. Of course, we saw the Dodgers continue to spend. Teoscar Hernandez making his way to Hollywood and downtown L.A. And then yesterday, the Chicago Cubs making a free agent signing and a splash in this offseason. Shota Imanaga, signed by Chicago yesterday. At least they are working toward an agreement. There has been some speculation on what a deal would be for the 30-year-old Japanese pitcher coming from the NBL. His nickname is my favorite part, Craig. He's known as the throwing philosopher. The lefty now signing with the Cubbies on the north side of Chicago. What should he bring to Chicago and MLB next season?
Look, it's very hard to tell with pitchers like this, but naturally, this is a big boost for the Cubs rotation. Justin Steele, I think, will front that thing. He's done a fantastic job, really come into his own over the last year. And if the Cubs are going to want to compete like they did last year and get over the top, which they did not last year, they're going to need to add to this. They had Marcus Stroman. It looks like Stroman's not going to return. So this does feel somewhat like a swap. Maybe the Cubs are not done yet. There's still a lot of rumors that they'll end up getting Cody Bellinger. It's sort of stunning to me that he is still out there as far as free agency is concerned. But if the Cubs lock Bellinger up and they add Imanaga to the mix, I definitely think that puts the Cubs at least in a position to give them what I would call a better than 50-50 shot to make the postseason next year.
Craig, looking at Japan now, that is the hot stove coming over, right? Yamamoto gets signed, $325. We just had Imanaga signed. Do we have any other impending free agents coming over from Japan that we can expect here in the next coming weeks? Because the one market that is moving is those Japanese players coming over, making big bank and looking to make a big impact.
Players signed with the Giants for $100 million. The Padres signed a relief pitcher as well. To my knowledge, no. I think that's it, Donnie. Maybe there's somebody that I'm missing, but I think Imanaga was the last one of that big three to sign.
Obviously, the Dodgers have been the most active team in all of Major League Baseball this offseason, and certainly then in the National League. Shohei Ohtani, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow. We mentioned Teoscar Hernandez as well. The Braves made some moves, though. They got Chris Sale. The Mets have been making subtle moves. Harrison Bader, Luis Severino, Adrian Hauser, and a trade between the Mariners and the Giants earlier this week. Robbie Ray, the former American League Cy Young Award winner with the Toronto Blue Jays, now will play by the Bay for San Francisco. Craig, we have spoken at length about the Dodgers. So how about the other teams trying to keep pace now with LA in the National League?
Well, Arizona's still in a very good position coming off the season that they had last year, and thus far they've done it the right way. I think they still could be in the mix to add another bat before the season begins. As far as the Padres are concerned, look, I don't know. I mean, they weren't really good last year, but they also were a little bit unlucky losing a lot of one-run games. But now they don't have Soto and they don't have Snell. So you would assume that at the very best, they'd be kind of where they were last year, making a small step forward. The big wild card team in the division is the Giants. And, this one is a strange one to me because I'm a fan of the Bay Area. I really love that ballpark, and I do like the city of San Francisco, but I think I'm alone here because no player wants to play for them. I don't know what is going on here, but the Giants have all the money, and they can't get guys to sign there. So I can't really get this sorted out as far as what's happening, but they wanted Yamamoto, they wanted Ohtani, they wanted Imanaga. I think they probably would love to have Matt Chapman play third base for them too, but the only way that it seems like they're going to be able to get the players that they need may be via trade, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that's just not a scenario that I saw playing out. I thought San Francisco is a pretty good destination and a nice city, but something tells me that the players aren't seeing it that way, Ben.
Two questions here I'm going to ask you, Craig, about the NL East. Number one, with the Philadelphia Phillies making the signing of Aaron Nola, haven't done much here over the past couple weeks outside of that. Who are they looking forward to? And also, from your Marlins perspective, a very progressive organization making Kim Ng the first woman general manager in Major League Baseball. Now going after Rachel Balkovich, making them the new director of player development. Talk to us about some of those interesting options here in the NL East.
Yeah, well, the Phillies at this point are still built to win, Donnie, and I think just getting Nola back is kind of enough. Like, I really don't see them making any significant moves. Their lineup 1 through 7 is as stacked as any team in the National League. Wheeler and Nola at the top. Remember, they added Michael Lorenzen at the deadline last year. That didn't really work out for them. Maybe they'd add a 4-starter or a 5-starter or something like that. But, Phillies are pretty much built the way that they are, and I don't see them having to really do much. They'll probably lose Rhys Hoskins, but I think they're probably okay with that. Bryce Harper's going to play first base. As far as the Marlins are concerned, I think that you'll hear a lot of that as far as the progressiveness, but I think just simply put, this is a move to help the front office with sports science and development, which is the background that Rachel has previously with the Yankees and even previous to that. Once upon a time, she was almost hired by the San Francisco Giants as well. So with the front office being added to and rebuilt in some ways with the Marlins, this is just another individual that's coming on board to help Peter Bendix, who's the new president of baseball operations. And I know the Marlins have been really quiet in free agency. I think it will change in terms of trade. I think you'll probably see one soon. Before spring training would be my estimation. But at the very least, if not, I know that they're going to be divesting, I should say, a lot of financial resources to the front office. And that doesn't make headlines. It's not fun for us to talk about here on the show, but they're probably going to invest more money in the front office than any team in baseball over the next year or two. So that'll be something to watch, but it won't be sexy for us to talk about.
Donnie was trying to get you to give us a name right there, Craig. He was trying to get us to give us a name here that would be floated that Donnie then could take credit for, that he was the source behind the source. That is Craig Mish. Well done, Craig. Well done not to fall into that trap. As we look at the National League pennant odds, to speak to the competition level of the NL East, once again, at least expected from the odds makers, 3 of the 5 best prices, the Braves, Phillies, and Mets, hail from that division. The Cardinals 15-1, and of course the Dodgers a very short favorite, less than $2 at plus 190. So let me ask you the question like this. It's 162 games. It's a stretch in playoff baseball come October as well. But Craig, will the National League pennant winner be either of those top 2 teams at the top, the Dodgers or the Braves?
Or the Phillies too. I think that you should include them in the conversation, but I think there's a good chance of that. the postseason in baseball has been more like the NCAA tournament with their new way of scheduling, where the division winners, the top seeds, get time off. It looks like they're not completely ready to go when time starts. But I think it's fair to say, Ben, that one of those two teams will definitely have a good chance. Look, the Dodgers keep getting knocked out. I don't know that getting the players that they have is going to change anything. It still remains to be seen. But for me, yeah, I think I'll probably take the Braves, as I mentioned last week on the show, to win the division. I think that they're going to do more at the trade deadline this year than they ever have before, because they've really been sort of quiet during that time, added a couple of pieces. I think they probably realized that the postseason and winning all those games during the regular season, you need to add some extra juice to the team at the deadline.
Ronald Acuna Jr., the reigning National League MVP, is the favorite entering this year at 5-1. In fact, the American League MVP, Shohei Ohtani, now plays in the NL, but the fourth best price at plus 950. Why? Of course, because Ohtani is not expected to pitch in 2024. Craig Mish, as always, we appreciate the time. We'll see you on Newswire in less than 40 minutes.
All right, guys, have a great day. Donnie, you got good sources. Always
breaking news coming soon.
He's got very good sources. You're his source, Greg. In fact,
yeah.
Donnie is the source behind the source.
Did you tell Donnie that without telling me? what kind of BS is this? I gotta go.
Here we go. Back on the early line next.
Fun to do because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting. But New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear.
You cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices. And we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
Right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby. The money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
The wife said we're getting the Stanley Cups, and now they got Stanley Cups in West Virginia.
Yep. They're doing $300 million gross a year in sales.
Listen, man, we don't need that much, man.
They're crushing
I'll take
it.
a little piece of the Stanley Cup. I would drink from the Stanley Cup every day. I'll have inscribed on there. We'll get our BVB inscribed.
Yeah.
Stanley Cups.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
That tells you how good this league is. Jeff, you're mine. Big 12. Who's the team to beat?
Well, it's always Kansas. I don't care who comes in the league. And I love Kelvin Sampson, what he's done in Houston. I don't care. So Marquette, to me, is the best backcourt in the country. Tyler Kolek's the best point guard. Cam Jones is an elite scorer who just plays with such a good pace, and he's so smart.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those two plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars have, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression this season. Not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We are just 3 days away from the start of the 2023 NFL playoffs played in the calendar year 2024. 14 teams still alive in the hunt for a Lombardi Trophy as a Super Bowl 58 champion, 7 in each conference. Let's start by looking at the NFL playoff bracket. Of course, the number one seeds in both conferences. The Ravens in the AFC, the most wins in the NFL this year, the best record, 13-4. The number one seed in the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers. The 6 matchups that we have this weekend, the 3 in the AFC, the 2 versus 7, Buffalo hosts Pittsburgh. The 3 versus 6, the Chiefs host the Dolphins. The 4 versus 5, it's the Browns and the Texans. Let's start in the AFC. On that side of the equation, Donnie, what is your favorite matchup of the 3 that we will see in the opening round of this NFL postseason?
I really think the matchups are great, but again, I can't get enough. Like the Houston Texans, for some reason, I think that's like a Bill O'Brien hangover. Like, oh, they got to get in that 4:00 spot here. That's actually going to be a good game, but that's not the games I'm looking forward to. I'm really looking forward to Miami, Kansas City, and also Pittsburgh and Buffalo. And the reason being is, like, we know Cleveland is probably the better team over Houston. Now, C.J. Stroud can change it up. They can win the football game, and it'll be interesting to watch. I'm not actually knocking that game, but that game's in a dome. Like, we know what we get. Like, I love the intrigue of the handicaps, Ben, where I'm going into Miami. Number one, going like, boy, how's that Miami defense going to hold up with all the injuries? Number 2, how's a Miami team that's used to practicing and playing in 80-plus degree temperatures with humidity going to go into a place with a real feel of -5 to -10 degrees? And then the Pittsburgh-Buffalo game. This is a new season. Like, Pittsburgh got in. Yes, they're down their best defensive player, but if you're going to tell me 22 degrees and 25-mile-an-hour winds, that game's it's not a toss-up because I think Buffalo is better. Don't get me wrong. But I'm not laying 10 points in that type of weather conditions and doubting Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers in that environment. So for me in the AFC, that 8 o'clock game Saturday night, that first game on Sunday at 1 o'clock, I can't wait to see it because there's so much intrigue just from the weather alone and the injuries and how that gameplay will play out in both of those games for me, Ben.
If the Miami Dolphins were fully healthy on both sides of the football with Tyreek Hill's return to Arrowhead for the first time, by far in the AFC, in my estimation, that would be the playoff matchup I am most looking forward to this opening weekend of the NFL playoffs. Buffalo, by the way, booked as more than a touchdown favorite 8 times this year. Just 2-6 against the spread with 2 outright losses in those 8 games as well. So for me, the most intriguing matchup is the first of Super Wild Card Weekend and the NFL playoffs this season. It's in Houston. I cannot wait to see what the Texans do as a home underdog with the resurgence of Joe Flacco, the 38-year-old now at the helm of this Cleveland offense. The highest wild card seed against a divisional champ, and the Browns are a road favorite. That's the game I actually am looking most forward to, and I find most compelling from the odds perspective. Same question, Donnie, in the NFC, where I think your chances are a little bit higher, or at least the options for you with the storylines in Dallas. Mike McCarthy against his former side, first playoff game for Jordan Love. Sunday night football in the Motor City. The Lions hosting a playoff game for the first time in 30 years. The reunion of Matthew Stafford making his return to the Motor City. Jared Goff on the other side against his former skipper in Sean McVay. And the Eagles stumbling wildly down the stretch, a road favorite in Tampa on Monday night to end out Super Wild Card Weekend. What is your favorite matchup from the NFC perspective?
As a fan, of course, I'm going to say Tampa Bay and Philadelphia, but let's take the fan cap off here. Certainly, that's not the most intriguing game of the weekend, and probably, quite frankly, maybe the least intriguing weekend, technically. That's why they posted on Monday night, because why? We're going to watch that no matter what football teams play on Monday night here. But if we're taking a look at the other 2 games on Sunday in the NFC, the 4:30 game, Dallas and Green Bay, the 8 o'clock game, the Rams and Detroit, to be honest, it's the Rams and the Detroit Lions, because I do think the matchup here, Matthew Stafford coming home in the dome, you already have the extracurriculars where I think it's hilarious that Matthew Stafford's wife is angry that the fans want to put a ban on Matthew Stafford Detroit Lions jerseys going to the game, and that seems to ruffle some feathers, which I do get a little bit of a chuckle out of at this point. But I do think Detroit is going to have a fantastic game plan ready to go. And also, I love the fact that the Rams took the week off here, are rested and ready entering into this game. I would be surprised, Ben, if we're looking at a lower scoring game in that game in the Dome. So for me, the most intriguing matchup, Matthew Stafford going back to take on the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, 51.5 is that total. It's the highest of the entirety of Super Wild Card Weekend. So it's Ben, it's Donnie, and now joining us to look at the start of the NFL postseason on behalf of FanDuel, Boomer Esiason joins us live right here on this Wednesday on the early line. Boomer, let's dive right in. Donnie and I were talking about our favorite matchups in the AFC and the NFC out of the 6 playoff games we have to start off the opening round of this postseason. I ask you the same question. Of the 6 matchups this weekend, 2 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, and the Monday Night Football finale, what is your favorite to start off the playoffs?
You know, for me, I love, of course, the Rams at the Lions. To me, it's Matthew Stafford going back home, and, of course, Jared Goff going against a team that didn't think he was good enough to lead them back to the Super Bowl. I think that is an absolutely awesome game. I also love the game, the Browns and the Texans. You got the older quarterback, Joe Flacco, who's having a resurgence against the C.J. Stroud effect. And there is no question that C.J. Stroud brings energy to the Houston Texans. And you know that DeMeco Ryans all week long is going to be playing the whole no respect card. And that's normally what coaches would be doing in this situation. I think those 2 games are great. Of course, I love our game on CBS, Pittsburgh at Buffalo. It's too bad that TJ Watt's not going to be able to play in that game. I think Mason Rudolph is going to struggle. I also think that Miami is going to struggle in frigid tempers at Arrowhead Saturday night. That's going to be a very difficult game for Miami. They're a team that has been torn apart by injuries. What was one of the best stories of the year going into December has turned out to be one of the bigger disasters as they start to now fall apart here late in the season and obviously the first week of the playoffs.
Boom, taking a look at these playoff games this weekend. 3 games in a dome and also 1 game in Tampa Bay. So weather, not concerns there, but I love this time of year because you're going to get one of those epic games where you just want to tune in and watch. But I want to know from you, as a quarterback, and just like Tua Tagovailoa and Patrick Mahomes are going to go through, sub-zero temperatures, how do you get yourself ready to play that game? Because quite frankly, no matter how much you can bundle up, boy, that cold weather is going to get to you at some point in that game.
Yeah, 100%. And by the way, you know, when you play in a cold weather city like I did, with the exception of 1 year in Arizona, and then you have to go on the road and play in the cold, it is a completely foreign kind of experience. Literally for Tua Tagovailoa, who's been playing in 75 to 80 degrees pretty much the entire season until they went to Baltimore last week, now is going to have to deal with something that he hasn't dealt with before. The one thing I will say is that Miami played well in Buffalo last year with Skylar Thompson, and they almost upset the Bills. So they're used to it. But, I mean, this is going to be ridiculous. I mean, this is going to be down in the single digits, maybe even wind chill below 0. That is a completely different set of circumstances. Now, personally, I love playing in that when I was living in Cincinnati and playing here in New York, and we had to go on the road to Buffalo 1 year, and it was a minus 35 degree below 0 wind chill, and a game that we actually played very well in. So we were used to the cold weather. Miami is not, and you cannot recreate that. You can recreate wet footballs. You can maybe create windy conditions with fans, noise with the speakers of practice, but you cannot recreate the cold. And I think that's why Miami should struggle here and should struggle mightily. That on top of their entire pass rush has been basically decimated.
Yeah.
I would think that the Kansas City Chiefs should have their way with them.
The linebacking core now, Jerome Baker, Andrew Van Ginkel, not slated to play on Saturday night in Arrowhead against the Chiefs either. KC booked as a 4-point home favorite. Boomer, 14 teams into the NFL.
I was going to say, how about Melvin Ingram? I mean, looked a little chunky out there to me. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, Boomer, I felt bad on that Sunday Night Football broadcast. They highlighted the play that Melvin Ingram had to play in coverage on the rookie tight end for Buffalo, Dalton Kincaid. It was a rough showing. He will be asked to do a lot now in this Vic Fangio Dolphins defense. So 14 teams into the NFL playoffs, all still in the hunt for a Lombardi Trophy as a Super Bowl 58 champion. Outside of the 1 seeds in both conferences, Boomer, the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC booked as the Super Bowl favorites. The Ravens only $1 behind the 1 seed in the AFC. Who is a team you have your eye on entering the NFL playoffs that start this weekend?
Well, I've had my eye on the Buffalo Bills the last 4 weeks. You know, Sean McDermott saved the season firing Ken Dorsey. Not that it was all his fault, but maybe they just needed a different voice in the ear of Josh Allen. And I know Josh Allen, he played a Josh Allen type of game against the Miami Dolphins. You know, that was the kid that we saw at Wyoming. That was the kid that we saw his rookie year. He's going to win the game any way possible. He may lose the game any way possible, but he's fearless, and that's why I love the Buffalo Bills' chances here to go all the way through and maybe even play Baltimore in the AFC Championship game down in Baltimore. But don't be surprised if we find ourselves at CBS up in Buffalo for the AFC Championship game, because if things go the way I think they're going to go, which would mean that Cleveland would beat Houston this weekend, that they would be the team that would go see Baltimore, and they're not going to be intimidated because they've already won there. And Joe Flacco going back to Baltimore would be amazing. That would be an amazing story. But I have to say, the winner of the Rams-Lions game, I think, has a legitimate shot. I also think the Buffalo Bills have a legitimate shot. I'm not ready to say the Browns are, just simply because I know their defense is Super Bowl caliber, and Joe's had a great run, especially the last 4 weeks, but he does throw interceptions, and turnovers in big games like this are a huge factor. And if he's going to throw interceptions, that means it's going to be tough for them to move on and get through teams like Baltimore and Buffalo.
If things follow the favorites this weekend, what a divisional round we could see in the AFC. Baltimore and Cleveland, the reunion for Joe Flacco, a rematch between Kansas City and Buffalo in the divisional round. Boomer Esiason, we appreciate the time as always. We're on the early line next.
Fun to do because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting. But New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear.
You cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
Right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
The wife said we're getting the Stanley Cups, and now they got Stanley Cups in West Virginia.
Yep. They're doing $300 million gross a year in sales.
Listen, man, we don't need that much, man.
They're crushing
I'll take
it.
a little piece of the Stanley Cup. I would drink from the Stanley Cup every day. I'll have inscribed on there. We'll get our BVB inscribed.
Yeah.
Stanley Cups.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
That tells you how good this league is. Jeff, you're mine. Big 12. Who's the team to beat?
Well, it's always Kansas. I don't care who comes in the league. And I love Kelvin Sampson, what he's done at Houston. I don't care. So Marquette, to me, is the best backcourt in the country. Tyler Kolek's the best point guard. Cam Jones is an elite scorer who just plays with such a good pace, and he's so smart.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those two plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars had, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. It's not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Live right here on this Wednesday on the early line. The two NBA premier handicappers on this network will preview tonight in the association in just a moment. But some breaking news out of the NFL. About 20 minutes ago, we got news that the Chicago Bears had fired offensive coordinator Luke Getsy after 2 years with the franchise and other various members of the offensive staff in the Windy City. And then we just got the further update from ESPN's Adam Schefter that Chicago is not expected to make a change at the head coaching position, meaning that Matt Eberflus is going to see year number 3 as the head coach of Chicago. Donnie, what is your reaction to Matt Eberflus staying put at the helm of this Bears organization?
It's very interesting here because they brought him in to be the CEO head coach, right? Which I don't mind that at all. Nick Sirianni in Philadelphia is a CEO head coach. And what that means is you're not calling the offensive end or the defensive plays. Take a look at the Patriots. They have a CEO head coach in Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That can work. But the one thing I didn't like the hire originally because I thought you had to get Justin Fields back on the right track, which means the next young up-and-coming hot coach that's going to be an offensive coordinator to lead that direction. And it was apparent that it didn't work out with Justin Fields in the offense. But I don't think it was for lack of trying. I just think they didn't have a great GM or a front office infrastructure that gave them the players to succeed with Justin Fields. I actually don't mind the decision for Eberflus coming back because it's apparent that team played hard for him down the stretch. And now you're saying, okay, if we get rid of our offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, it's going to be a new regime. And also keep in mind, they dismissed their defensive coordinator early in the season. So it'll be a new defensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator.
Yep.
But the questions now remain, is that actually good news for Justin Fields, or does that mean we're going to wait and see who our offensive coordinators are going to be until we determine who we actually want as our quarterback here in the offseason? A lot of question marks for the Bears, but quite frankly, these are good decisions to actually be made. That franchise should be going in the right direction.
See, I don't know if I feel the exact same way. I think you can look at what happens lately and assume you are trending in a positive direction. The Bears won 5 of their final 8 games of this 2023 NFL regular season. But I've had questions about Matt Eberflus as the head coach in Chicago for all of this season. I think we saw that exemplified earlier this year. It's clear Chicago likes what they have enough to see what the future holds. Matt Eberflus's record, though, in 2 years is 10-24 as the head man. The Bears have been booked as an underdog in 28 of those 34 overall games, 11-16-1 against the spread. I think you could read between the tea leaves, Donnie, and think, all right, Chicago staying put at head coach. What's the other most significant position in an NFL organization? Quarterback? Are they going to stay put with Justin Fields as well? The number 1 overall pick for the Bears, Caleb Williams, the hefty odds-on favorite to be that first overall selection. I wonder what the thought process is overall in the organization. Just because you have one head coach remaining in Chicago doesn't mean the quarterback has to stick as well, but that at least is the start of this offseason for this Bears franchise.
And let me ask you this question here, because this brings in the bigger picture. We know how NFL franchises work, at least healthy ones. They didn't just come to an agreement, Ben, on, let's just say, Wednesday morning that, oh, yeah, this sounds good. Does this mean that they reached out to guys like Jim Harbaugh and said, look, we got an opening coming up here, possibility. We got the money here. We got the number 1 overall pick. Will you come to this organization? They may have done that to the 3 or 4 top coaching prospects just to get that vibe. And if they weren't hearing what they liked, hey, you know what? Maybe we'll just keep it status quo. We like what we have in Eberflus. But I wonder how much pressing down they were at some of the other big coaching names out there because, quite frankly, I don't love the Bears organization, but I know what teams love, and particularly new head coaches, getting the number 1 overall pick who might be a franchise guy that you can coast for the next 10 years and win a lot of football games with. That's what I want to know behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely so. And I think that's a great part of this conversation as well, because if Chicago did move on from Matt Eberflus, yes, that is a ton of head coaching attrition very early on, only 2 years in the Windy City. However, when you think about what the opportunity would have been for that new head coach, is it not one of the most attractive head coaching spots that you could have? The storied franchise that is the Chicago Bears, with so much draft capital, including the number 1 overall pick in 2024 and more than $100 million worth of cap space this offseason. It does say a lot that they are sticking with Matt Eberflus. All right, now to the NBA. Of course, we will continue to update the coaching carousel around the National Football League as more news arises throughout this week. Now to the NBA, a matchup of the two best records in the respective conferences around the association. Boston at 28-8 has the best record in all of the NBA. The best record out west, that would be the Minnesota Timberwolves. A 21-point win last night for the T-Wolves on the road in Orlando. They are now 26-10, but tough to have the second leg of a back-to-back in Beantown against the Seas, who are a perfect 17-0 inside TD Garden, where they will play tonight in Boston. The Celtics booked as a 9-point favorite. Over-under is 223.5.
By the way, check this out. Jason Tatum got a much-needed break there against the Indiana Pacers, the past game. Before that, Ben, take a look at his statistics. 30, 30, and 38. But that's not all he was doing in those games, as if he was like, one of those Devin Booker games, 37.3 rebounds. Take a look at this. 38 and 13, 35 and 9, 38, 6, and 13, which is incredible. So Tatum is going to be rested and ready. This is a big game for the Boston Celtics. I expect a big performance out of Jason Tatum. Having said that, do I want to lay close to double digits? Not necessarily. But for me, Tatum should be full gas pedal tonight for me.
17, 16, and 2 for the Boston Celtics against the number this year. That's 36 total games entering tonight for Boston. They've been booked as a favorite in 35 of them. As a home favorite this season, of course, the Celtics a perfect 17-0 straight up, booked as a favorite in all 17 games. Boston 11-6 against the number. I think it's a Boston line. I think it's the Celtics laying 9, even though the number does seem a little bit drastic against the team with the best record in the NBA's Western Conference. You mentioned Jason Tatum, 26.5. I would look, however, at Anthony Edwards. Second leg of a road back-to-back for Minnesota for sure. He only scored 6 points last night. The T-Wolves didn't need a ton. They were up 67-37 at the break against Orlando. So although Anthony Edwards is playing on the second leg of a back-to-back, he didn't have a ton from the scoring output last night in Orlando.
No, he certainly didn't. But yes, you're looking for players. And also, the back-to-backs are all different, right? You have to go into overtime. You played technically 5 quarters here, then you go on the road. Look, that wasn't that big of a performance last night where you need to exert all that effort. So maybe you get a bonus game here tonight out of the Timberwolves. But certainly a fun game to watch, no doubt about it.
An interesting line for our next game up. Oklahoma City on the road in South Beach against the Miami Heat. I would expect, despite OKC having the second best record in the NBA's Western Conference at this moment, to at least be a small road underdog. They're laying 4.5 tonight in Miami.
Yeah, you know what? Take a look at this game, too. I'm trying to find those underlying value games because is it easy just to go with SGA the entire way? Sure. Look at his last 4 games, 36, 33, 34, 32. But that Heat culture tends to slow the game down a little bit, which I find fascinating that we have like a 235 total here as it sits. But if I'm looking from a Miami perspective, still no Jimmy Butler expected back in the lineup tonight.
Yeah.
Last game out, Tyler Hero scored 28 points, which was 10 of 20 from the floor with 34 minutes. With him being out, talking about Jimmy Butler, last couple games, 38 minutes, 34 minutes, 27, 35, and 34. If I'm looking from a Heat performance, put it this way. Maybe I don't want to lay that 4.5 with the Miami Heat, but if the Heat do win this game, a big reason is going to be Tyler Hero. If the Heat do lose this game, Tyler Hero can still have a big game. So instead of just taking the side from a Miami Heat perspective, I look at Tyler Hero. I'm going to take his points to the over regardless of them win or losing. That's a nice price to pay here for a total that's in the mid-230s here. I think we get points, and I think Tyler Hero is a big part of that for the Miami Heat.
Really like that look, Donnie, especially for a team that will be a home underdog looking to pull off an outright upset. The Heat this year, 8-8 against the spread as an underdog, that even 500 cover percentage, but 6 of the 8 covers an outright victory. Again, Oklahoma City, second best winning percentage in the NBA's Western Conference at 24-11. They have 2 less losses than the Nuggets, who have 26, but 2 less wins, I should say. Denver has 26, Oklahoma City 24, 1 less loss, only 11 for the Thunder, 12 for the Nugs. Oklahoma City, as a favorite this year, 14-7 against the number, but a road favorite, just 3-4 ATS. All right, next up in Los Angeles, it's where the Raptors remain. If you haven't heard Toronto's new head coach, Darko Rajakovic, and his rant last night after the foul shooting disparity at the free throw line against the Lakers, of course, who won by 1 against Toronto. It is worth your time. He cracks his neck like he's getting ready to go into a boxing ring before he unloads on NBA officiating. How does Toronto feel then, inspired tonight against the Clippers team that is playing some of its best basketball of the year at this moment? LA booked as a 10-point home favorite.
Yeah, it sounded like last night one of those villains from like an old Die Hard movie, like the perfect captor. Now, if we take a look going into this game tonight, I'm going to go to Toronto Raptors. On paper, if you go player by player, it is a huge mismatch here. But also, yes, it's a back-to-back, but it's in the same city. The travel's what kills you, not the actual game the night before. But if I know how the human element works, the NBA ref crew that gets this game tonight already heard that rant from last night. They don't need to hear it on back-to-back nights. So maybe some of the calls go in the Toronto perspective tonight. This isn't even a handicap of X's and O's. It's just the fact of the matter. Usually the squeaky wheel gets the oil. You're probably going to get that tonight here. I'll take Toronto with the double digits.
No doubt about it. Give me Darko Rajakovic and the Raptors tonight. The Serbian intensity from Rajakovic after the game against the Lakers last night. By the way, the Raptors covered as a 4.5-point road underdog, 10-11-1 against the spread as a dog this year. The Clippers have been great covering numbers as a favorite, especially as of late, 18-11 ATS. Quickly, here's some college basketball as we are firmly into conference play. Look up and down the board tonight, especially in the top 25 tilts. And you will see this idea of winning on the road in conference play is as difficult as you will find. Home underdogs? Nah. Home wolves is what we have to start calling them. Number 5, Tennessee, on the road in Stark Vegas tonight against the dentist that is Chris Jans and a Mississippi State team that wants to grind you to a halt. Only a 2.5-point spread, Donnie, in favor of the Volunteers.
Now, Ben, if I see correctly today, it is Wednesday, right? That means it's hump day.
Yeah.
Do you know where Mississippi plays their games? At the hump. I mean, is that just a sign right now in the stars that we're looking for an easy victory tonight? But by the way, enough with the easy victories. These two teams are going to get after it defensively. Mississippi State, top 10 in defensive efficiency. You take a look at Tennessee, 2 in efficiency. My goodness, here, points tough to come by tonight. I'm taking the under at the hump tonight between Tennessee and Mississippi State.
Could not agree more for every reason that Donnie just said. 2 top 10 defenses in college basketball. It's a battle of the Tar Heel State. They say in North Carolina, if you can't go to college, you go to state. What do we see tonight in Raleigh between the Wolfpack and the Tar Heels? UNC, a road victory over the weekend against Clemson. That's impressive. A 3.5-point favorite against the Wolfpack tonight. 154.5 is that total.
You know, in Tobacco Road there, you usually want to say, okay, rivalry games, you want to take the under. That's not going to be the case. Now, granted, you see UNC's offense, top 10 in the country here in efficiency. But the question for me is the turnover percentage. Both of these teams don't turn the basketball over. UNC, top 15 in the country at holding on to the ball. How about this? NC State, number 2 in the country at not turning the basketball over. I look for extra shots to go up. Give me the over tonight. UNC and NC State.
It's a strong NC State line. Same story in Columbus. Ohio State, a 2.5-point home underdog against the Wisconsin Badgers. Wisconsin, a top 25 team. A best bet coming your way up next.
Fun to do because you could kind of, place a season-long bet all at once and just wait it out. I've always found that interesting. But New York is one state where it's a little bit unclear.
You cannot bet on basically anything that requires a vote. So you're talking about an MVP award, a Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, anything where people at the end of the year have to vote.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
The wife said we're getting the Stanley Cups, and now they got Stanley Cups in West Virginia.
Yep. They're doing $300 million gross a year in sales.
Listen, man, we don't need that much, man.
They're crushing
I'll take
it.
a little piece of the Stanley Cup. I would drink from the Stanley Cup every day. I'll have inscribed on there. We'll get our BVB inscribed.
Yeah.
Stanley Cups.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
That tells you how good this league is. Jeff, you're mine. Big 12. Who's the team to beat?
Well, it's always Kansas. I don't care who comes in the league. And I love Kelvin Sampson, what he's done in Houston. I don't care. So Marquette, to me, is the best backcourt in the country. Tyler Kolek's the best point guard. Cam Jones is an elite scorer who just plays with such a good pace, and he's so smart.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those two plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars have, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. It's not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Yay, congratulations, but the game was over at that point, so another one of those terrible beats. If you had 3.5, 4, even 4.5, this was a 10-point game until the final closing seconds.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Closing out our 3 hours together live right here on this Wednesday on the early line. It's Ben, it's Donnie, and the SportsGrid app never leaves your side. Available for download at both the Apple and the Play Store. You can scan that QR code on your screen. In the SportsGrid app, there are 5-star plays. Those are known as best bets. We give you one here, each individually, for your Wednesday night of action. So before we say farewell and before we say goodbye, it is time for bye, bye, bye. Donnie right side, what do you say? What's the best bet on this Wednesday?
Yeah, let's keep it pretty simple here. Tennessee and Mississippi State. Let's get involved here. Tennessee, top 5 team in the country here. Mississippi State. And we got to go to the under here. We're usually over, guys, all the way across the landscape. So it's got to be under 138.5 in that game between Tennessee and Mississippi State, as Ben is surveying his FanDuel Sportsbook application right now, trying to scramble to find another best bet. So that's why I'm filling in time right here, being a consummate professional as a co-host here to make sure he finds the play. And it looks like he finally has found his play. So we're going to throw it back to Ben now here. That's how you do it in this business.
Thanks very much, Donnie right side. Love the under 138.5 as well in Start Vegas tonight between Mississippi State and Tennessee. Again, we speak of the idea of winning on the road in conference play in college basketball is as difficult as you will find. So much so that a top 15 team in the country in Wisconsin can be on the road tonight. They are the last undefeated team in Big Ten play this year and be booked as an underdog in Columbus against Ohio State. And by the way, Chris Holtman's team, I've been very optimistic about with the returning guard play they've had, led by Bruce Thornton, 12-3, 2-2 in Big Ten action, but both losses on the road. Booked as a home favorite tonight back in Columbus. Lay the 2.5 with Ohio State against Wisconsin. If it doesn't hit, just know that my real best bet was under 138.5 between Mississippi State and Tennessee. He's Donnie right side. I am Ben Stevens. That does it for us here on this Wednesday on the early line. We'll see you tomorrow, bright and early on a Thursday at 8 a.m. Eastern time here on SportsGrid.